Welcome, welcome, everyone. We have finally got going on our Tuesday night chat. We're going to talk about money. We're going to solve the world's problems. I have my hot chocolate. I hope you have your hot chocolate or wine or whatever. No judgment here. It is a Tuesday night. We've already walked through the technical hitches, and now we get to talk about some money instead. Um, Now, if you do miss this, I mean, hopefully, because I've had to do a little workarounds for the technical glitches, but these lives always put on the Making Sense podcast, as a little recap. So if you have to go and do anything at any point, I get it. That's fine. Just go and listen Spotify, Apple tomorrow, and you can get the full chat on the Making Sense podcast. Or, of course, if you're listening on TikTok, come and join us on YouTube as well, and you can still get your full video experience. Now, disclaimer before we get going, of course, whenever we're talking about money, this is always stuff that works in most situations, right? I can't account for every single situation that could happen when we're doing these chats. It can be different. So if you're listening to this and you think, actually, that sounds mostly right, but I think that doesn't totally apply to me, trust your gut because you know your life better than I do. So general information works for most situations, most people need individual advice. That's what we have financial advisors for. Yeah. Um, and do send me your questions and your comments as we go because I like to keep an eye on the chat section, the comment section, make sure that while we're live, right, that we are actually using this time together, chatting, hanging out, getting your questions answered. So let's do it. Make the most of this time. So we're going to dive into it. Tonight is mood boards. And now this is not something that I would usually expect from me, right? Like, I like to consider myself fairly logical kind of girl. That is how I ended up in the money world, really. Life gets hard. What is a lever we can pull to try and make it easier? Stable financial base. Facts over feelings. Get on with things. Get things sorted. Here is the thing. This is why we are talking about mood boards tonight. One fact that does not care about my feelings about wishy-washy and woo things is that a mood board really actually works. If you have a big financial goal that you're struggling with, you probably need a mood board. Seriously. You might, like I do, associate mood boards with interest and dream weddings, but if you use them the right way, they are also rocket fuel for serious financial goals. Now, here's why. If being good with money was as simple as just doing what we know we need to do, 90% of us would be doing better than we are right now. Spend less than you earn, save some every week, don't panic sell your KiwiSaver. None of that is breaking news. It has been covered endlessly by me, by other people, yet many of us just don't do it. Various reasons, big and small. Why not though, really? Why not underneath all of those reasons that we tell ourselves why we're not doing it? What is the real reason? Life is hard, can be expensive. Yes, budgets are tight, but most of us could at least be saving $5 a week regularly or investing it, even better. Even the small amounts that we could be saving and investing, many of us don't. Now, a few episodes back on Making Sense podcast, I brought in a financial psychologist, Dr. Brad Klontz, and love his work. I actually talked about him in my second book. So I knew his work, and the chance to bring him on the podcast was just so good. You should listen to that episode. Fascinating man. But he's looked into why many of us don't do these little things that we know we should. And a big reason is just literally the way that our brains are wired. So, in his writing and his research, he points out, obviously, we evolved to survive, not to save. And our caveman brains are built to grab opportunities in the moment, not squirrel away resources for a retirement 30 years away. That is not what evolution was thinking about as we were coming up. So, long-term thinking takes a lot of effort, and delayed gratification actually goes against everything in the lizard wiring parts of our brain, and that lizard wiring, it's super powerful. So, then you add on top of that any of your personal history with money, such as how we grew up, what we saw our parents doing or not doing, and the cultural scripts that we absorbed. Now, all of those layers carve some really deep grooves into how we're going to approach financial decisions. So if you've ever self-sabotaged a good savings streak by suddenly treating yourself and actually going into overdraft and not feeling very treated at all, feeling stressed instead, you'll know what I mean here. Honestly, I think all of us have been there. The problem here, often not knowledge, it's motivation. That is where the humble mood board comes in. Now, the financial world doesn't usually get emotional, but that is part of the problem. That is why typical financial advice doesn't work. There is this preference for charts, to talk about interest rates and acronyms. Like, believe me, I am fighting constantly with guests. They always want to go to stuff like, "I've got my data," and I'm like, "Nobody cares." If you're trying to actually change your financial life, not just read about it, that cold, clinical approach will not get you far. We are wired to respond to emotion, to imagery, to storytelling, not a spreadsheet. And that is why the mood board works. It's working with our wiring instead of against it. So, Brad told me about the study he ran where participants either got standard financial education, great, yay, or they were asked to do something a little woo. They visualized their goals, which if someone did that to me, I would just be so cringe. But anyway, visualized their goals, connected them to their values, and then literally created mood boards. I'm talking like scissors, sticks, the whole lot. They made these mood boards. And what do you think was the result? 73% increase in savings amongst the mood board crew. Gonna say that again. 73% higher savings for people who did the mood board compared to people who were given good standard financial education. And it's not because they suddenly had more money, it was because they had a why. They could see their goals. They could picture it. They could emotionally connect with it, and that is the whole point. I would die if you made me do this, but it works. Like I said, the facts don't care about my feelings on this. It works. So, if your savings goal is just a number in a spreadsheet, you will probably ditch it the moment a new iPhone drops. Nobody saves because they should or to be good or because some financial expert like me tells them to. You will last 2 weeks max if that's what you're relying on. But if your savings account is literally called "Freedom Fund to leave my toxic job," you're then gonna think twice before rating it for a midweek Uber Eats. You're gonna see that name, and you're going to be reminded of what you're actually doing this for, that you're not actually depriving yourself, that you're building towards something. When you give your brain this vivid, desirable future to chase, the present becomes easier to manage. So, you wanna quit splurging on sneakers and save more. You're not just saying, "I should be responsible, I You are choosing something exciting. You are choosing the beachfront batch or the sabbatical or the freedom to walk away from a terrible job. You're not just saying, "Don't spend and be good." You're choosing to make bigger plans and to go for them. So here's a really simple way. Will in the chat. I couldn't think of any. Mate, me too. Me too. I hate the idea of visualizing my goals, of connecting emotionally with them, and yet it works. What do we do when these things work? Yeah? Oh, I love this, and another couple of questions in the chat on YouTube as well. "Oh, a compliment on my jumper. Thank you so much." And a question about what we think will happen with, Berkshire Hathaway now Warren Buffett is gonna stand down. I definitely have thoughts on that. Let me finish the mood board chat, and we'll talk Warren Buffett because is is he like every investor's hero? He's definitely my hero. We love Warren Buffett. Does anyone not love Warren Buffett? He's great. So yeah, Mark, coming back to that, definitely. Okay, so really simple ways to stick with your goals. Say that you want to save more money. It needs to be real, and it needs to be something you are doing. You're not just cutting back and depriving yourself. You need to be going towards something, not away from something, right? This is why doing things like naming your savings account, it matters. Call it House in Hawke's Bay or FU fund, not just savings. Put a picture of the goal in your phone background, tape it to the fridge. Open your online banking and rename your automatic transfers so they are shouting your goals right back at you. If the mood board really makes you cringe, like me and like Will, fair call, Will. There are less cringy ways to do it, but you have to start with what feels good. What would make you feel excited to wake up to it? What would you do if money wasn't a barrier to what you want from your life? And then do whatever you can to make that feel real, make that feel like something you are going towards and something that you can remind yourself every step of the way. That's where your real goals live. On a surface level, this mood board thing feels so frivolous, so cringe, but scratch the surface, it is anything but. You are building the emotional fuel that will power consistent, unsexy habits like budgeting and automating your savings. And then, the slightly sexier, but still boring if you're doing it right, to be honest, investing. That's a real wealth builder, but you've got to be doing it regularly. So you need to find your money why. That is how you keep going when it gets boring or when it gets hard or when it's feeling all a bit uncertain out there. So, automation, part 2 of the trick. And I will say, for those who are watching live, if you want to come back to this at any point, Making Sense podcast is where this whole conversation is gonna be posted, okay? So, Apple, Spotify, YouTube, all the good places. If you've gotta go, that's cool. Come back and listen to the whole thing because I promise this is science. This is science that is gonna keep you on track for your money goals. So, automation, part 2 of the trick. Once you've got the vision, you've gotta make it effortless. Once you've named your account, Coffee in Paris, set up an auto payment into it for the day after you get paid. And then when temptation hits, because it will, you've already made the good decision ahead of time. The money is moving without you. You're still allowed to want nice things in the moment, but you've also made space for future you to have something even better. You can't always change your income overnight or control what the reserve bank does next, but you can get really clear on what you want, break it into the smallest doable steps that you can, and use every psychological hack at your disposal to make progress feel real. That is what a mood board does. It flips the script from vague overwhelm to specific ambition. It shows your brain exactly why it's worth it. Now, I'm just double checking if we have any more sort of questions or comments. Yeah, looks like you guys are mostly just chilling, which I love. You're just letting me rant away at you. But do drop stuff into the comments if you have thoughts, feelings as we go. I just wanna run through some psychology behind this, right? Because, yeah, like I say, I get it. This feels super woo, getting out your mood board, using it for your goals, but there's actually a lot of psychology behind this, right? So we're going into it. So, 1, visualizing your future self, it really does enhance the saving behavior. So, we've got so many studies that show if you vividly imagine your future self, try to connect with your future self, you're more likely to make good financial decisions. One study, right, they even used immersive virtual reality. I'm talking like the goggles and the stick in the hands and everything, to let the participants interact with an age progressed version of themselves. So like an avatar of themselves that looked older, and they could interact with themselves as an old person. And afterwards, the people who took part in that study were more likely to avoid impulse spending and save retirement instead. Because suddenly the idea of getting older and wanting a good life in their golden years was real to them, and they were willing to do what was needed to look after their future self. And all the smart academics call this future self continuity, which means that when we have this strong connection to our future self, we're more motivated to make decisions that benefit us long term. So there you go. Now, 2, mental accounting. This is something I talk about naming your accounts on here, right? This is actually just the simple version of mental accounting, which is based in behavioral economics. So, this guy called Richard, I don't know if it's Richard Taylor or Richard Thaler, I don't know, Thaler, Richard something. He had the concept of mental accounting, which is where you mentally separate your money into different accounts based on different criteria, and we talk about this in my money course as well, if you've ever done money boot camp, um, where one of the budgeting tactics that I talk about is chunking, where you can make as many different bank accounts as you need, and then you have them labeled for different things, but it's particularly powerful for your savings when you label savings account to your specific goals. So, like I say, beach house fund or emergency savings or whatever. And you can create a stronger emotional attachment to your goals. That makes it so much easier to resist emotional spending. Just make sure if you do have a bunch of different accounts, set up to help you with this, online only, no fee accounts, you don't wanna get caught by fees. Fees are killing. Now, a third one, financial mindfulness. And again, God, doesn't that sound woo, but it works. So financial mindfulness means being present and aware of your financial decisions. And you're aiming, this is what will save you from having to use spreadsheets or apps that track you or whatever. What you're doing here is just trying to recognize emotional triggers and make intentional choices. Yeah? And you can support this with things like financial check-ins or mindful pauses of a day or a week before purchases and having gratitude for your current financial situation. There is so much research on how this leads to concrete, improved financial results. Just embrace the woo. There was this, it was a 2023 study that found people who practiced financial mindfulness had better credit scores and more rational investment choices. So, woo but true. Alright, last one. Small habits consistently is how you get ahead. Because I know we're all looking for the silver bullet. We want that one big thing that we've been somehow missing to be what saves us. But if you actually want to stick with your savings goals, break them down into smaller goals on a manageable time frame, and it is doing these small things over and over again that is actually what gets you ahead. A weekly or a monthly goal, far more likely to succeed than a 5-year goal, and if you have a 5-year goal, break it down. The 5-year goal might be really important, but you've got to break down the steps to get there and make them feel as immediate as possible. Remember, our brains evolved to be surviving in the here and now, to be grabbing opportunities as they came up. We did not forward plan when we were living in caves, and that is when our brains were forged. So you want to make your goals as immediate as possible. If you've got a 5-year plan, break it down on the bits to get there. So there's something called a cyclical approach to savings, and that can result in 78% more money being saved than other methods. And that's what you're doing there. It's creating these little goals that stack on top of each other, and it is using that momentum to keep pushing forward. You need little things often. So there you go. All right, that's my mood board thoughts, and that is all of my psychological woo. So this is even better in terms of if you've got your questions, your comments, drop them in now. Let's have a wee chat before I'm done for the evening because, I always bring my hot chocolate out and then I never drink it because 'cause I'm too busy, like, yapping away. So I end up having a cold hot chocolate by the end of these chats. So maybe I'll even have a lukewarm one. Oh, I love this in the chat. I put a reminder on my phone. "How's your account looking now? Do you need a change?" Yes. Put reminders in your phone. That's brilliant because technology distracts us all the time, right? But this is I even have, like, yearly reminders that pop up in my calendar that say, check in on this bill, check in on that bill, just to remind me to negotiate better bills because tell you what I love more than being good and saving and cutting back. It's paying less for the exact same thing. Paying less for my power bill and getting the exact same power coming through? Yes, love that. So every single year, I will go through and I will check in on those bills, and you just pick 1 per week because otherwise it's too much. We all have busy lives. But, yeah, no, it's, a really good one to do. On the topic of me having my cold hot chocolate, I need a microwave beside me. Yes, indeed, I do. Um, yeah, so let's chat about Warren Buffett, um, standing down from Berkshire Hathaway, 'cause he's is it 94 now? I think he's 94. So tender age to say, "Oh, yes, I think I might stand down as CEO." I mean, he's barely gotten started. But look, it's been a really busy week, so I haven't read a lot of the think pieces that have been around on this. So this is going to be a purely personal response on the Warren Buffett chat. But the man is a legend. The man made it possible and made it normal for everyday people to just get into investing and to get into things like index funds, which if you've watched or listened to any of my content, you know I love index funds. Index funds are still the core of my investing strategy. So the idea of Warren Buffett, oh god, one day he's gonna die, and that's gonna freak me right out. I mean, he's n if he is 94, I'm pretty sure he's 94. But how long does the man have? I know he's richer than God, but, we'll still go in the end. So it's just this kind of little nod towards his mortality, and what an incredible mark he will leave on the financial world, that he has been the stalwart of everyday investing for so long. Um, and I really feel like everyday investing and the average sort of little person has being able to look at him and say, "This billionaire loves index funds, says they're the best thing ever, so why do I have to overcomplicate it?" He did so much for puncturing the big fund providers who want to charge you insane amounts of money for doing very little with your money. He did so much to break that down and to show that you can absolutely DIY this and to make that totally normal. So, yeah, I'm do you know, I'm just gonna be sad to see him go. But I guess all good things must end. Um, so yeah, drop in any more questions. I saw someone ask, "Has your view on the media changed after how they treated you?" Do you know what? And I know I've if anyone hasn't, caught up on there are past episodes of the podcast on this. We don't really need to rehash my employment history. Um, but yeah, has my view on the media changed after what happened? Do you know what? Genuinely, um, I put that down to a couple of people who were in very influential positions, yes, but I had a long career in the mainstream media. I enjoyed it. It was awesome. I worked with so many good people, especially the people I worked alongside. The journalists I worked alongside were the best. I really, really enjoyed the people I worked alongside. Smart, curious, interesting people who just wanted to find out good information and help other people make good decisions using that information. So I love the journalists I worked alongside. Some of the bosses changed, the people I reported to changed, and it went tits up really fast. Um, so I really just put that down to there are shitty people everywhere. I still think media is really, really important. I still think good, strong news is important, especially news about your money. Um, and I think the news can be a really good way to get that done. I just didn't wanna keep putting myself through the ringer to do that. I thought there were ways that I could still bring other people important financial information without having a layer of idiots above me making my job harder, if I'm really honest. And so here I am independent, and I get to do more, um, than I could before. And I'm very, very grateful to live in a time where you can go independent and still reach people and still do good work, because that wasn't always the case. So, there we go. That was possibly too long an answer, but there we go. Um, what branch or sector or country or whatever is your favorite index fund? So I don't know if I necessarily myself have a favorite index fund, like a single one, because again, it comes back to I mean, obviously, we did the disclaimer at the beginning of this saying it's general information, not individual. And truly, people can have different goals for their money that might mean they invest in different things. Um, I think if you're just getting started, a global index fund can be an amazing choice because then you're invested across hundreds, if not thousands of companies, and you really, really want I mean, the core of investing is to make sure you're not just in one company, not just in one country, not just in one industry, and so a good global fund, I see the S&P 500 coming up in the chat. I love the S&P 500. That is, of course, the 500 biggest companies in the US. I don't think you even want to be just the US. You wanna make sure you're getting a bit of Europe. Europe is doing amazing right now. Japan, I think, has been doing pretty well. Australia's doing pretty good. So you can sort of bounce around by having a few, um, but a good global index fund is a nice way to start, and then you can sort of say, "Okay, what are my interests from here? Am I interested in technology? Then maybe the Nasdaq is for you." Or maybe you really think, Australia is gonna do big things, and so you might go to the Australian top 200. There's so many options from there, but I really think start out as broad as you can and then have special interests from there. You can do 1 or 2 other index funds from there. Um, so I think okay, I'm gonna make this the last question. I love it. Is Franny short for Francis? That would almost be a worse name than Gary. Yes, okay. If you want to be my enemy forever, you can call me Fran or Franny. Um, hate both. Hate both with a passion. And I think it's because I had a teacher and I'm trying because we had forms when I was in high school, and now I'm trying to, like, mentally change it to, like, the year system. I'm really showing my age now. I think year 7 or 8. Um, So, I had a teacher around that time who would call me Franny Fran Fran every time she referred to me, Franny Fran Fran. I just hated her, I hated it, I hated her doing that. So now sometimes people call me Fran or Franny, just, like, looking for a little nickname, and I get it, we love a nickname here in New Zealand, please don't pick Fran or Franny. I hate it so much. Um, Sometimes people just refer to me as F, which is great, and then we can tell people to F off. No, I'm joking. Um, I do get called Frank. My mum calls me Frankie, which is only for my mum. Um, but yeah, mostly just Frances. I like Frances. It's a good name. I'm named after my dad, so there we go. Now I've got someone in the chat calling me Fray Fray. I love it. Alright, well, on that note, that's probably us going personal enough for the night. Hey, it's been great chatting. Thank you so much for putting up with the technical hitches at the beginning. It's been lovely. I like doing these Tuesday night lives where we can. So thank you for coming in and for asking your questions and listening to me rant about mood boards. We'll do it all again another time. Bye, team.